Kjære fremmøtte EU- og Polen-interesserte, både her i Litteraturhuset og dere som følger oss på streaming der hjemme, eller på kontor, eller i bil, eller hvor som helst. Vi veldig glad for å få ta opp dette temaet, for det ligger oss sterkt på hjertet. For vi føler at dette angår noe av kjernen i det som vi kjemper for. Jeg heter Torbjørn Wilhelmsen og har gleden av å lede Europabevegelsen her på Vestlandet. Og jeg jobber ikke som statsviter eller som professor eller noe sånt innenfor hverken jus eller samfunnsvitenskap. Men akkurat som dere er jeg opptatt av demokrati, solidaritet og likeverd. Og jeg tenkte at til tross for min manglende formalkompetanse, så er det greit at vi har etablert en form for felles forståelse om hva er det vi skal snakke om i kveld, nemlig det liberale demokratiet. For som alle dere vet, demokrati betyr folkestyre. Det er borgere av en nasjon som gjennom åpne og frie valg avgjør hvem som skal tildeles politisk makt. Flertallet bestemmer. Så hva så med den liberale demokratiet, den liberale dimensjonen? Et liberalt demokrati erkjenner også at minoriteter har rettigheter som skal ivaretas. Skrekkeksemplet på det motsatte er jo Nazi-Tyskland, der demokrati gjennom demokratiske prosesser mistet minoritetene alle sine rettigheter, med det grufulle resultatet det gav. Så et liberalt demokrati kjennetegnes av ytringsfrihet, retten til å eie, religionsfrihet og en rettsstat hvor den lovgivende og utøvende makten frikobles den dømmende makten. Og selvsagt for oss kanskje at det er likhet for loven. Konkurranse er også et kjennetegn, og det handler selvfølgelig også om ytringsfriheten, at det er fri konkurranse om velgernes gunst ved valg. Dette kan ses i sammenheng med ytringsfrihet, og det er kun gjennom full ytringsfrihet at velgerne eller borgerne kan gjøre seg opp frie og selvstendige meninger om hvem de vil ha til å representere seg selv i parlament og regjering. Et levende liberalt demokrati har også et levende sivilsamfunn, hvor borgerne kan organisere seg i alt som ligger dem på hjertet, om det skulle være en frimerkeklubb eller en politisk bevegelse med klare politiske mål for arbeidet. Det er altså noen forskjeller på demokrati og vårt liberale demokrati. Som Civita, tenketanken, skriver, et av de liberale demokratis viktigste formål er å beskytte individet mot overgrep fra flertallet eller fra staten. Det liberale demokratiet er en samfunnskontrakt mellom folket og statsmakten. Motsatsen i dag til det liberale demokratiet er mer eller mindre autoritære eller totalitære demokratier. Noen snakker om illiberale demokratier, eller til og med demokratier i forkledning. De kan se demokratisk ut på utsiden, men blir styrt eller styrer mot autokrati bak fasaden. Det betyr at makthaverne vil beskytte seg selv og sine tilhengere. De splitter samfunn, de følger ofte opp populistiske oppskrifter ved å favorisere noen grupper i samfunnet, lene seg på autoriteter, det kan være seg kirken eller det kan være andre grupper, og de snakker gjerne på vegne av folket, som Marine Le Pen gjorde, mens de i realiteten skaper et oss og dem samfunn, et splittet samfunn. NUPI, Norsk Utenrikspolitisk Institutt, skriver i en artikkel nylig at ifølge den uavhengige amerikanske organisasjonen Freedom House er det mye som tyder på at 2018 blir det 13. året på rad hvor demokratisk tilbakegang er å se på verdensbasis. Vi ser stadig flere autoritære regimer og færre demokratiske land. For eksempel har Russland og Kina blitt mer autoritære, mens såkalt illiberale demokratier vokser frem, blant annet i Tyrkia, så vel som i EU-landene Ungarn og Polen, sitat slutt, fra NUPI. Samuel Huntington han med The Clashes of Civilizations, som dere vet, mener demokratiet har vokst fram i 3 bølger. Fremveksten av det føderale USA og 29 land før første verdenskrig. Etter andre verdenskrig slo demokratiet gjennom i land som Tyskland, Hellas, Italia og Japan. Den tredje bølgen var i perioden 74-89 med land som Hellas, Spania og Portugal. Etter Berlinmurens fall føyde tidligere autoritært styrte land som Tsjekkoslovakia, Bulgaria, Ungarn og Polen inn i det demokratiske styresettet. Det kan være en oppgave for forskere å diskutere hvor liberalt alle disse demokratiene ble. Aftenposten-journalist Ingrid Brekke har en interessant observasjon i alle fall om dagens utfordringer med det liberale demokratiet i disse siste landene. Og det handler om at etter hennes observasjon disse landene ikke fikk en anledning til å gå gjennom det som man kanskje kunne kalle en form for lutringsprosess etter andre verdenskrig. Landene gikk rett inn i et nytt diktatur under beskyttelse av Moskva. Noe etterkrigsoppgjør fant aldri sted, slik som vi hadde i Norge, for ikke å snakke om Nürnbergsprosessene i Tyskland. Og dermed gikk land og folk glipp av muligheten til et kollektivt oppgjør med tankegods som la grunnlaget for andre verdenskrig, samtidig også legge krigens forbrytelser bak seg, så å si. Da Ungarn og Polen ble demokratier etter vestlig oppfatning, manglet disse landene erfaring, og den demokratierfaringen som vi i Vest-Europa på det tidspunktet hadde fått gjennom et par generasjoner allerede. Så jeg synes at Ingrid Brekkes påpekning kan ha noe for seg. NUPI skriver videre, begrepet illiberale demokratier brukes for å beskrive et styresett hvor politiske ledere blir valgt av folket gjennom hovedsakelig frie flerpartietsvalg, men hvor rettsstaten svekkes og sivile rettigheter som ytrings- og organisasjonsfrihet blir kraftig begrenset. Illiberale demokratier kjennetegnes også ved at prinsipper om maktfordeling utvannes, og uavhengigheten til institusjoner som domstoler og pressen begrenses. Sitat slutt. Og da er vi ved kveldens tema. Hva er det som skjer i Polen akkurat nå? Polen markerer sin nasjonaldag 11. november. I dag markerer vi 9. november, slik vi pleier å gjøre i Europabevegelsen på Vestlandet, som den dagen Berlinmuren falt. Og da er det naturlig for oss å reflektere over blant annet demokratiets status og stilling rundt omkring i vår del av verden. Til å hjelpe oss til å belyse dette temaet og hva som skjer i Polen, har vi vært så heldige å få med oss polskfødte, nå doktor på juridisk fakultet ved Universitetet i Bergen, Malgorzata Cyndecka. Hun tok doktorgraden på tema knyttet til EU og EØS-rett, særlig spørsmålet om statsstøtte og personvern, også det vi kanskje i dag kjenner som GDPR. I tillegg så har vi med oss en gjest til, ikke fysisk til stede, men på linje fra Gdansk, og da kan vi ta henne opp på bildet her. Veldig fint. Skal vi ta opp fullt bilde, så får vi utnyttet bildeflaten maksimalt. Yes. So from now on, we will take this further on in English. We are also privileged to have with us Dorota Soblowska. She is judged in the Gdansk District Court in Poland. She is also a member of the board of the largest Polish association of Polish judges, Justitia, and she's spokesperson for Justitia's regional section in Gdansk. Justitia is an independent, apolitical, and self-governing association of Polish judges. Their main mission is to defend freedom and civil rights, which are the democratic foundations of Poland, and Poland as a member of the European Union. Justitia has been operating for more than 25 years, also as part of different international organizations of judges. They associate over 3,500 judges, most of them in Poland. So thank you so much so far, Dorota, for being with us. But let's start here in Bergen. So, Malgorzata, thank you also so much for being with us. Poland is one of the largest countries in the European Union in general. How is the opinion among the Polish population towards Polish European Union membership?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here tonight, because the topic of Poland is extremely important, not only to Polish people in Poland, but also Polish people in Norway, but also to Norway, because I hope that you will understand at some point, at least here, that what is happening in Poland has a big impact on, amongst others, Norwegian businesses, because they have no longer a guarantee that if they have any cases before Polish courts, that those courts are independent. So this great cooperation that we have between Poland and Norway is endangered, and this is definitely the fault of the governing party. When it comes to Poland, to Polish people and their views on the European Union, if we hear the government, of course they are saying that the EU is trying to oppress Poland. The Polish Prime Minister is even talking about the third war. So he's using quite strong metaphors, and of course he's saying that we Polish people are going to defend ourselves. If you ask Polish people, well, 80% are in favor of staying in the European Union. So, to put it simply, they are not buying the government's propaganda. Still, this propaganda is extremely aggressive. We have to remember that in 2016, the government overtook the public broadcaster. So television, radio, right now even local newspapers, and local newspapers are very important to Polish people, just like to Norwegian people. They have been taken over by the government, and the propaganda is extremely aggressive, extremely negative. When I talk to people who are much older than me, who experienced how the communist propaganda worked and how it operated, they say that, well, it has never been so bad. And what they are even angry about is that they feel that they are being treated like idiots. Because what the government is saying is that everything is perfect in Poland, while it isn't. Right now we have inflation that is almost 7%, so definitely it's not going well. While the government is not talking about problems of ordinary people, the government is talking about the EU or about Strasbourg, so the European Court of Human Rights, who allegedly are trying to oppress us as the Soviet Union did for some years ago. But in general, Polish people are positive towards the European Union, and I really hope that they won't have to choose between the government and between, well, that government maybe, but between being a Pole and between a European citizen, because definitely this conflict that the Polish government is talking about between Poland and EU, it's an imaginary conflict.
I know this is not your specialty, but in general terms and over the years, Poland is said to be the #1 receiver of fundings from the European Union. Can you say a little bit of what you think Poland has gained from the European Union membership?
We gained a lot. I personally gained because I could come to Norway as an Erasmus student. So Polish students could travel, they can travel, they can study abroad, they can learn new things, they can either go back to Poland or they can stay abroad. If you go to Poland, you may see that almost all the new roads, those are the roads that are built thanks to money from the European Union. Even though the government is is trying to deny it. So every time they are opening a new road or any other piece of infrastructure, they are saying that they have built that, while the truth is that in many cases Poland gave 10%, the EU gave 90%, but you don't hear about that in the Polish television, of course. We gained a lot, we became finally we became a member of the European family. We have to remember that Poland was betrayed after 1945. We fought not only for our freedom, we fought for freedom of Western Europe, but we were just sold in Yalta. That was Moscow that decided about pretty much everything that was going on in Poland from 1945 to 1989. So we finally got back to this family of European nations. So I could probably say a lot about what we gained, but the thing is that many younger people than me, they don't remember how it was before 1989, and that's quite risky because they don't realize that before we became member of the European Union, you need to have a passport to travel abroad. Right now they take such things for granted, and it wasn't like this. So probably the only thing they can notice is when Facebook is down for 6 hours. That's drama.
That's drama.
Yes. Otherwise, no.
But I think as a Norwegian, I also thought of Poland as a European country. So it was very natural that you also became a member of the European Union, as from my perspective.
We never left. We were just kicked out.
Yes, exactly.
So, or we were just taken over. So it was not Polish people who didn't want to be the part of Western Europe.
Yeah. Now, European Union is, you can see it as a kind of club of member nations. It's free to enter. But in order to be a member, you have to sign on a sort of membership contract. And in the case of European Union, you have to adopt the 4 freedoms, which is basic for that. These 4 freedoms state that goods, services, capital, and persons can move without restrictions within the European Union. And the aim is to integrate all member nations in one single market, and thereby nourish peace and prosperity for all people. In order to ensure this standard is visible in everyday life, the European Union also is a system of justice, is a juridical system. The EU law has are based on some values, and this is more in your field. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Well, I would say that it might be a bit artificial to speak about European values, because such values as democracy, as human rights, as freedom of speech, freedom of gathering, there are also Polish values. So it's not that we suddenly adopted something that was completely unknown to us. And of course, as you said, when you become a member of the EU, you are entering an agreement in a way, and well, you have to stick to this agreement. So you should obey certain rules. Still, having said that, it's not that for example, independent judiciary system is an EU value. That's also a value that is written down in the Polish constitution. So it's nothing that we got from the EU. It's in the Polish constitution. So.
But this is based on, as you said, human rights and the freedom of speech and all these things I mentioned as a part of the liberal democratic system, and that is also adopted. And you already said a few words about that. You already wasn't familiar with that in Poland, so to say.
Yes, of course. I mean, before 1989, we had a completely different system that was neither a democracy or a country that had a free economy. That was something created by the Soviet Union and governed by the Soviet Union, pretty much. But after 1989, we finally could go back to our values. And Poland, we have had democracy before the Second World War as well. So it's nothing really new to us. It's not that we had to be taught those values. So
revitalize. But in all Europe, it seems always to be frictions about what is, so to say, a national agenda and what is a European agenda, and what is internal national laws and what all member states have to adjust in accordance with the law from EU. And this is a question about national sovereignty, and this is quite some troublesome, isn't it?
It is, definitely. But still, it was our choice to become a member of the EU. So we accepted that when it comes to those fields of law that are regulated by EU law, it's the EU court that has the last word. So, for example, the four freedoms. If there is any doubt about how to interpret it, this type of law, we have to ask the EU court about that. And then, of course, it's not that that Europe or the EU is a federal state in a way, that we have given up our sovereignty. That's not like that, and nobody is saying that, well, apart from the government that is trying to say that EU is trying to steal our sovereignty from us. Of course, there are certain areas where Poland still has the possibility to decide. But still, when it comes to values that apparently we are fighting for, like, for example, independent judiciary system, that's the value, or that's one of the bases of the Polish system. It's not that the EU is telling us that you Polish people, you don't understand what independent judiciary is. We have it written down in the constitution, and the problem is that it's the Polish government that is infringing the Polish constitution, while they are screaming a lot about defending the Polish constitution. So that's the absurd that is that we are observing right now.
We'll come back to that, but the debate seems to be very similar to what we have in Norway, to sort of give away some of our sovereignty in various aspects. But from your perspective as Dr. Juris, a specialist in European law, why is this actual relation now between the Polish government and the EU has become so tense?
Well, what the government is trying to do is they are disregarding very basic values like the division of powers. So they don't think that we should have this division. They want to control everything, especially the judiciary system. While the EU is saying that, well, this is not what you can do because that's not only written down in the Polish constitution, but it's also written down in the treaties that every member has to safeguard that the judiciary is independent and the judges are independent. Why PiS is trying to do that? Well, they were really aware of the fact that if they want to control the country totally, they have to take over the courts. So they started with the Constitutional Tribunal. Right now they are trying to take over the Supreme Court. If they do so, then it's really game over. Because the Supreme Court is, amongst others, deciding whether the election is valid. And we are talking about any kind of election, local elections, presidential elections, parliamentary elections. So if they succeed in taking over the Supreme Court, then it's really the end for the Polish judiciary, and it's going to be extremely difficult to go back, not to mention Polish citizens, that they have no guarantee that the judgments they received, that they are actually in force, that they are valid. Maybe they are not existing, actually. So yes, the Polish government is also trying to undermine minorities. So everyone has heard about the so-called LGBT-free zones. And this is pretty much the fault of the Catholic Church that is also making sure that this topic is being discussed all the time. So we hear from the Polish bishops that we are not talking about people who are not heterosexualists. We are talking about ideology. And we have to get rid of this ideology because they are equally dangerous as Nazists and communists. That's the language of the Catholic Church in Poland. And they have an enormous impact on the government. Of course, I'm not going to say that every single priest is saying that. We have wonderful priests that are trying to point out that, well, actually Jesus was saying something completely different. But those are only exceptions. That's the official rhetoric of the Polish Catholic Church. And of course, women's rights. Maybe you have heard about the case of a pregnant woman that had to pay with her life a few days ago because of the very restrictive law on abortion that was highly applauded by the Polish bishops, who were extremely happy with the fact that now Polish women will be forced to give birth to children who have no brain, or maybe half brain, but still, as the leader of the governing party, Kaczyński said, well, we will make sure that also such children will be born because they have to be baptized. So those women are risking their lives because they are going around with fetus that can die any minute, and they are risking an anaphylactic and septic shock. So we already have cases where that happened. Many of those women survived. They were lucky enough. The one that we have heard about, Isabella, she didn't. And as she said in her messages to her mother, well, the doctors cannot do anything because of the new law. So that's the reality. And, well, yes, and of course, when EU is saying that, well, women's rights, you cannot force women to do something like that, then of course we have the government saying that, well, we are sovereign. We are not going to do what the EU is dictating us. So that's the level of the discussion in Poland.
So this is a wanted development. It's not a matter of political accident or coincidence or something.
Absolutely not. Of course, there is a difference between different politicians in the governing party and the coalition, and some of them are more extreme, some of them are less extreme. But still, this is the official line of the party, even though if you ask the Polish government, of course they are not, they don't want Polexit. They will say that's the opposition that is talking about Polexit. But if you say that if you're not respecting the judgments from the EU court, you're not going to do what the court is saying, and you declare that parts of EU law is not valid or is in contradiction with the Polish constitution, which is an imaginary conflict. Can you say that we are still in the EU? I mean, it's like saying that, well, I'm married, but I'm like having 10 lovers, and I'm not actually living with my wife, but I'm married, right? Mm-hmm. Mm. So...
It's a contract there. Used to be, at least. Let's focus now on directly to Poland. Dorota Zabludowska, thank you again for being with us and being patient with us. But you represent an organization with, as said, more than 3,500 members, judges. How is the situation as seen from your point of view in Poland, in Gdansk? Now we shall see. We have to do something. Wait a little bit. We have some troubles with the sound. Shall we wait a little bit? We have the Black Magic Web present the microphone. Yes. Okay. Maybe, Dorota, if you can, do you have a microphone on your computer? We still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you. Super,
okay.
Super. All right, but you
Now you'll
heard my
time, yes.
question. You heard my question?
Yes, certainly. I heard all that you have said.
Super.
Under everything that Malgorzata will say. I would like to emphasize the reason why the courts are under attack in Poland right now. If you want absolute power, you don't want any limits. So within Poland, it is the courts, the executive power and the legislative. And outside Poland, it is the EU institutions that limit the power of the government. So this is not about the sovereignty of Poland, but it's about the government doing whatever they please. And at the bottom of this are civil rights of our citizens. So this is not about the judges, this is not about the EU Commission, it's about Polish citizens who have a right to the free movement of goods, the free movement of people, the free movement of capital, and most of all, they have a right to justice. And they will not get any justice against the government if they do not have independent courts. So the situation at this moment in Poland is that we have several, because what Malgorzata did not say is that the party created new chambers in the Supreme Court in order to have their own judges. And the Court of Justice of the European Union declared that one of those chambers, the disciplinary chamber that was created specifically to control the judges, is not a court within the meaning of the EU treaties. Moreover, yesterday or the day before, there was a judgment from the Court of Human Rights that declared that not only the disciplinary chamber, but also the other new chamber of the Supreme Court also is not a court as to Article 6 of the Convention of Human Rights, which means that it's not an independent court, and if a person's case comes in front of this court, they have not the guarantees they should have. So this judgment has a lot of impact upon internal affairs in Poland, because this particular chamber of the Supreme Court declares the validity of elections. So it declared the validity of the election of the president of Poland and also parliamentary elections. So in fact, after this judgment of Court of Human Rights, we do not have a valid statement that the parliament and the president actually got properly elected. So what the Polish government does to reverse the effect of the judgments of the European courts, and I'm talking about the Court of Justice and about the Court of Human Rights, first of all, they try to muzzle the judges. That is, they forbid the judges to control whether a judgment was properly issued. And secondly, they are trying to prevent judges from applying those judgments from either of the courts. And right now there is a war by the government, by the Minister of Justice against the judges. If any judge applies the judgment of the Court of Justice of the European Union and says that a court was not properly appointed, they get suspended by the president of the court or by the Minister of Justice himself for 30 days. So this is pretty serious. And you could ask yourselves the question, what does it have to do with Norway? Well, if a Norwegian citizen has a sentence in Norway or in an EU country that is not to the liking of the Polish government, they can say that we will not respect this judgment. So it's not just the judgments of the Court of Justice. I think that in the prospect, it will be any judgment issued by another country. So this is very serious, and we as Polish judges and as an association of judges are desperate to preserve the independence of Polish courts for the sake of Polish citizens and EU citizens and also Norwegian citizens. But we are the power with only the law as our arms. So without the help of institutions, of civil society, I don't know how long we can last in this situation.
But you represent an organization with 3,500 members. Can they represent some sort of different power towards the government?
We have made resolutions. Our members are independent judges, so they issue judgments in their cases. But we do not have a power of lawmaking.
No.
So when the law in Poland is bad, we can, of course, apply the Polish constitution, we can apply the European law, but we cannot change the law itself.
But
so when the process of nominating judges is faulty, we can only state that this judge has not been appointed properly. So when they issue a judgment, it's not a judgment, actually, what Malgorzata said. But we cannot make the government change the law so that it could be put in order.
But I guess you have some impact, though, haven't you? I mean.
Well, we don't. They hate us. We have talked, of course, to the international community, to the European Commission, to the European Parliament. We tried to talk to our government, but they will not listen to us, and they actually have passed a couple of laws to make the judges mute.
A year ago or so, many people went to the streets to demonstrate against media restrictions, and you mentioned also how now the government has bought very many of the local papers, but the limitation was about who that was allowed to cover debates and so on in the parliament, and the government had to withdraw these restrictions due to heavy mass demonstrations in the streets more or less all over Poland, as we were told. So this is a part of the picture you're painting, is it? That this is a question about power and the use of it, right?
Yes, certainly. But what hurts me the most, and I think Malgorzata as well, is that the Polish government does not use their power for the public benefit. They use it to preserve the power for itself. So it is not for the sake of the citizens. It's for the sake of the party, of its nominees, of its many various positions that their members got in public companies. This is not for the Polish people.
But this law that was tried to enforce on the media restriction, how did that story end?
Well, actually, the broadcaster got a license in the Netherlands. So they would have to admit the broadcaster in Poland anyway. So finally, they gave up.
So they had.
This is the power of the free movement of companies.
So they have to.
Of services.
Yeah. So yes. They have to open up the doors for a Dutch yes. Broadcasting company.
Exactly, because otherwise they would broadcast as a Dutch on the Dutch license.
But the newspaper are still restricted to cover what's going on?
Well, it's not. It's more sublime, because it's not censorship in itself. It's the economic censorship. So there is one huge oil company in Poland that is government-owned. It's called Orlen. And this company acquired many other companies that are not connected with its operations at all, because they acquired those local newspapers. And right now we have signals from journalists that they cannot work in those newspapers anymore because of what they are made to do. Because, for example, when a photographer is sent to a political meeting, they are supposed to take as ugly a shot as possible of a politician from the opposition, so that they can publish that. Today I heard that in February the same company is going to acquire the greatest chain of bookstores in Poland, Empik. So, Malgorzata got depressed, yes. So that's censorship of writing as well, because they will not distribute authors that are not popular with the government. So we will have censorship in Poland without actual law.
Is that you share this perspective?
Absolutely, and as Rota says, it's about economics, and because newspapers, they are of course they have to earn money to survive, and it's not that the readers are sponsoring the newspapers; they're about adverts. Those newspapers that are supporting the government's propaganda, they receive a lot of money from adverts of public companies. So they live very well. The other newspapers, well, they have to somehow struggle. They have to, well, of course, they have to be of a good quality. Otherwise, nobody would buy those newspapers. But just to give you an example how, in a way, pathetic this policy of the government is. When COVID came, and it was so extremely important to inform people about restrictions, about measures that should be taken in order not to get sick, in order not to die. There was a special fund or a special sum of money that was supposed to be spent for advertising all those messages in newspapers. The newspapers that are not supporting the government, they informed for free. They didn't get any money, while the public friendly newspapers, they earned a lot of money. So, and the government didn't care about citizens being informed about how to protect their lives and their health. So that's only one example how they act. I mean, they don't do a single thing that would benefit the citizens. Well, unless the citizen is a peace voter, then it's okay. And as even one of the members of the parliament said, well, those of you who don't support the government policy, you should give back all the money that the government is giving you. So all those social support money that people receive, that they should give it back if they don't support the government. So that's the level of taking care of citizens.
Malgorzata, you mentioned the Catholic Church supporting the strict law on abortion, but what is their position in the actual case of the new disciplinary chamber for judges? Do you know if, and you can maybe see if you're after it.
I haven't heard anything in particular about that, but maybe Rota knows something.
Do you know anything about how the church take a position here in this disciplinary chamber of judges case? Or are they just silent?
Well, they don't take a position at all on that. But as the Polish church is very reluctant to take a position on child molesting within the church, I wouldn't count on them to defend the judges. So.
But we had very many people commenting on our Facebook site when we announced this event, and we had a number of stories there. And it seems to me that, and others also, is that Poland is very divided these days. Do you think is it visible also in everyday life in society?
Well,
yeah.
If I may,
yes.
I have been to a reunion of Czech judges 2 weeks ago, and it was, well, I attended this meeting, and at first there was a senator speaking to the judges and telling them about the works in the parliament concerning the judiciary. Then there was the Minister of Justice who said what was done and what was not possible to be done, but they will try to improve things. And then there was a general prosecutor talking about the independence of the prosecution. So it was extremely sad to me, because it looked so normal. The powers working together for the public good. This is how it used to be in Poland. It has never been perfect because the judiciary was separated from the political power, but at least we treated each other with more or less respect. And now this is like total war of everyone against everyone. Nobody knows why. So there is no work for the common good. And this somehow this attitude of the ruling party, well, it influences also ordinary people. It's natural because they hear it on the television. They have different television channels with different kinds of news, and even those that try to be objective, they somehow report this war of the government against the world. So this is not how a state should work. It's very visible on any level. Malgorzata agrees.
Yes.
It is, and it's what I probably hurts most people is that it's very visible and very present on the level of families. So, for example, my family is completely divided. It's impossible to talk to each other because politics is extremely important to Polish people. So we always discuss politics, I would say. So we discuss politics, we discuss health issues. I think there was, and religion, I suppose. The three topics, probably they should be avoided just to keep peace. And when I came to Norway, it was, I was on a detox, I must say. and it really felt like, Jesus, they don't care, or like, how can you have like a family where I know, because right now I have a Norwegian family, and I know that they have, there are persons that are supporting Høyre and SV. It wouldn't go in Poland. I can assure you that without like victims, it wouldn't go. And still, it's a family, a very good family, great relations. But in Poland, it's just impossible. It's like the level of this hate speech that the Polish television, amongst others, Polish television, is trying to keep it up. It was even a report that was prepared after the elections from an independent authority that pointed out that the level of propaganda, level of hate speech in the Polish media, that was just unbelievable. And people are being fed with this kind of language every day, in and out. So we cannot talk to each other, we cannot discuss. Well, before this debate, I received some private messages calling me a whore. Yes, from Polish people living in Norway. Yes, so that's the level of the debate. So I'm just afraid that, well, how many years are we going to spend on trying to get back to normal relations? Because there will be always divisions in the society. Nobody ever said that you should have everyone agreeing on everything. It's not China. We are talking about European democracies, and we should always have different opinions. But if we don't respect each other, I mean...
It's basic. It's basic for society. I mentioned you will celebrate November 11th as a national day, right?
Oh.
Yeah, okay. You understand my question.
Subject, actually.
Is that visible also on such a day?
Well, I will give you the example of what was happening in Warsaw as a matter of the Independence March, so to speak. First of all, there's been a public gathering that was notified by a couple of private persons, and they got the permission from the city council to go on with the march. Then there was another organization called the March of Independence, which is a very rightist organization, favored by the government, and they organized the march for several years, and there's been also always disturbances and destruction of the city. For example, last year when they weren't permitted to go on with the march, they went anyway, and they burnt out an apartment with a firecracker. So that's how it went last year. So this year they didn't get a permission. The governmental representative, the voivoda, issued a permission for them, a preferential one. The president of Warsaw went to court with this permission and won. The court said that this should not be granted because they didn't fulfill the formal criteria. So, after the court's final decision, the Minister of Justice Prosecutor General decided to go with this case to the Supreme Court, to the extraordinary chamber that he controlled, so that they overturned this decision. Well, and after the Supreme Court decided that this case is not ready to be put in front of the court because of formal faults, today I heard that the Association of Combatants decided that this should be a formal national march by this organization. So this is how the Independence Day will be celebrated in Warsaw. There will be 2 marches concurring with each other, and I am sure there will be a lot of mess, a lot of noise, and no children with balloons and
Polish flags.
So that's how it goes.
Yeah, it's sad.
And actually, after this second to last judgment, when the organizers of this march, when they lost in the court before the Minister of Justice decided to challenge it in this special chamber in the Supreme Court that they control, the Minister of Justice organized a press conference, and he said that we are not going to, don't respect this judgment. Just go ahead. The Minister of Justice. We are not going to respect the judgment of the court.
And also the Minister of Justice calls the judgments of the courts that he does not like judicial anarchy, that they should get rid of. So the newest idea is to reform all the courts so that they can get rid of all the judges that they don't like. And this is pending. So we are waiting for the project.
It's a very tense situation, as we hear, and it's sad to hear. I mean, I have known that this is bad, but the way you explain it to me, it's even more critical than I expected, actually. But do you see any way out of this situation? How to? There has to be a way out, of course, but before we open for questions from the audience here, maybe you have some ideas to share with us about how to come through this and see some lights in the end of the tunnel?
Well, I hope it won't be a train, this
No,
light,
no.
this light in the tunnel. But maybe Dorota would like to start.
Will you start, Dorota?
Well, I think that the answer is very simple. The government should enforce the judgments of the Court of Justice of the European Union that pointed out exactly what is wrong with the so-called judicial reform in Poland. And in fact, right now it's €1 million a day as a penalty for not changing the law. So we are paying every minute as we speak, because the government doesn't want to follow the judgments. And we as Judges Association are very eager to help solve those problems, because we see the problems, we as judges deal with them every day. In fact, we are going to, next week I think, we are going to present our own projects of changes in the law. But I don't know whether we will be heard at all or considered. But changing the law is a start, and it's a necessary condition.
Was it?
Yes, what I would like to emphasize is that I think it would be an extremely bad idea if the situation were that it would be the EU or the Court of Justice of Human Rights that should force Poland to make any changes. It should be the society, it should be us, Polish people, who wake up, who see and realize what is actually happening and start making changes. I'm not really a fan of having some external forces to tell us what we should do, and I really believe that that the Polish society is capable of doing something like this. So of course we have been told by the EU court, by the Court of Human Rights, what is wrong. We should listen to that and we should start making changes. And as Dorota said, changing the law is the very first thing. Then of course other issues, such as, for example, a very relevant question is, okay, right now we have judges, the so-called fake judges, because they were appointed by this politicized judiciary council. Right now we have, probably 1 million judgments that were issued by those judges. The question is, what happens with those judgments? What about those people who rely on those judgments? So of course we cannot have the situation that will be a kind of a legal vacuum. So the idea is that those judgments should stay valid, but the citizens should have a limited period of time of deciding whether they want to challenge a judgment that was issued by a fake judge or not. That would be fair. There is no other solution. It's not a solution that we will, in a way, try to take revenge on the governing party. It shouldn't be like this, because it's going to be our citizens who are going to pay for that. Other changes. Right now we have the situation that the Minister of Justice is the same person that the Prosecutor General. That's the reason why any scandals that are identified by journalists, even if you go to the police, even if you report, if you want to start the investigation, it's not going to happen. Because all prosecutors are controlled by the Minister of Justice, and everything is put down in a nice way. Some other changes. The judges that are in the Supreme Court, the fake judges, they should be definitely removed. We have the Constitutional Tribunal that is doing exactly what Mr. Kaczynski is wishing for. We have fake judges in the Constitutional Tribunal, so it should be those judges should be removed. We should have a new fair competition according to the law, because those judges were appointed in breach of the Polish constitution. We are not talking about breaching EU law. We are talking all the time about breaching Polish constitution that the Polish government is allegedly defending. It's like the constitution is all the time on their lips, surprisingly. Yes, those are some of the issues that should be looked into more closely.
Something tells me that this will take quite some time.
Yes, we need to have I would say, consensus, but still there are, of course, limits to any consensus, because it's like you cannot have a dialogue. Well, you can have a dialogue if both parties have good intentions. Right now, there is absolutely no dialogue.
We will open for questions from the audience. So if and we will use a microphone, so also Dorota and the others on the streaming can hear the question. And here is one over here. Yes.
Thank you. Well, hi, my name is Aurora, and first I want to thank you guys so much for enlightening us here today. It's sad to hear the state that Poland is in for the moment. My question is about the future of Poland, the young people. Do you see a difference in the opinions of the youth of the country that might be positive for the future, the political future of Poland? Thank you.
Who will start? Maybe you will start here?
I'm quite negative, actually. If it continues like this, it's not going to be a bright future. if we look at human rights, at women's rights, at the rights of minorities, there is no place for you. Well, unless you are white, you are hetero, and you are a Catholic. Then you probably have a good place there, but maybe not always. Well, you have to support the government, of course. I have recently spoken to one of the deans of one of the leading universities. Actually, that was one of the deans of one of the leading universities in Poland. And he told me what the Minister of Education is doing with the universities, how they are manipulating the so-called points that universities, departments have to gain from publications of their employees in order to get money from the government. So they are changing the points overnight. So you can suddenly, you have a situation that you could get 70 points for publishing in an international journal. Overnight, you get only 5 points. And I've seen such scientific publications concerning, for example, Catholic calendar on Mars. So if we colonize Mars, they have already found out how we should organize this liturgic calendar.
Good to know.
That is extremely good to know. And that's what money of Polish taxpayers are being spent on. Well, I don't like this idea. Maybe some do. The dean told the faculty how they are being pressed to publish in the right journals, how to ignore the other journals. So the Polish science is also risking being diminished. So this is, of course, only a small part of the problem of young people. But I would say that if you don't get a proper education on the highest possible level, well, your chances for a bright future diminish as well. So, and of course, young Polish women, I hope that they really will understand what is going on with their rights, because we have to remember that it's not that we got the government from somebody gave it to us. They won the election. One thing is that we have a very low participation in the parliamentary elections, so we don't care about democracy, obviously. The other thing is that, well, if we don't, well, somebody votes for them anyway. So suddenly you end up wondering, well, what about my rights? Well, you actually voted for those people, so probably you can blame yourself in many cases.
Dorota, do you want to add something about the youth?
I'm more optimistic actually, because I have seen many young people who care. There is this youth climate strike, and there are many organizations that care, young people's organizations that participate in the right of in the life of the society. So what I was going to say is that you have your voice and you have your vote. So when you use your voice and you use your vote, the future is yours.
Okay, that's good. That was a positive way of looking to the future. Any other questions in the audience? Yes, there were one there and one there afterwards. We have two here. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Tore Fredriksen, and it's sad to hear about the decline of the Polish democracy. And for sure, the democracy is fragile, and we can see it in many countries. And you were asking them about the future, if there were any light in the future. And I guess the pressure of the European Union is not a good idea. I asked a friend of mine before this meeting. He's a Polish man. He has been living in Norway for over 40 years. But every time we discussing Poland and politics, he's very eager. But he was shouting out, and I tried to get him here tonight. He was shouting out, we don't want to be a German vassal state. And then I start thinking about the Polish history. For sure, you can this better than me. And the Polish people have been beaten up by the Russian, by the Swedes, by the German, by the French. More or less every country in Europe have been marching through Poland, and they haven't had a nice life. So I can understand that I don't want to be a German vassal state. In this word, a vassal under EU. I guess the changes has to become within the Poland, and to convince them that this is the only way. So I don't think about outer pressure, but I think change within the country from the people, and enlighten them and see this is a better way to do it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, comments?
Yeah, if I may. Maybe what I meant is like, I think it's good to have a pressure from the EU, because it's also that EU is caring about Polish citizens who, as Dorota said, have right to a fair trial, have right to independent judges, they have right to have their rights not being infringed. What I meant is that I wouldn't like the changes originate from outside. I would like to those changes originate from inside. So that's the most important thing. About Germany, it's an extremely sensitive topic, and of course it's extremely easy to misuse Polish history, which is very sad. We have, of course, many wonderful victories, and we are very proud of our history. But about Germany, it's not the Germany. That's Germany that is trying to oppress Poland or Polish government. Actually, Angela Merkel is one of those who were insisting, insanely, I would say, on keeping a dialogue with the Polish government. And I personally blame her a lot for what is actually happening in Poland. She was saying all the time, we cannot pressure Polish government, we have to stick to dialogue. So we have been sticking to the dialogue since 2016, since peace started its famous judicial reform. So luckily, she's out of the game, and I really hope that there will be a change. So this is absurd, talking about that Germans are coming and are going to make us slaves again, while Germany was one of the countries that actually safeguarded the position of peace. But that I'm not blaming this person for saying that, because that's how the propaganda works. So, for example, Donald Tusk was constantly being blamed for doing everything for Germany, for doing everything Angela Merkel said.
Blame inside Poland?
Yes.
Okay.
So that was the constant message from the Polish television. Yes, he's the one who's doing everything Merkel says. So we are talking about two different worlds. And now I think you may understand that how extremely difficult it is to explain what is actually going on.
There was a question on the corner here, down here.
Okay, if I'm allowed to make a few short comments as well. I mean, I would like to say, having worked with Poland for almost 3 years now, that, well, the initiative to change this doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within Poland. It comes from civil society organizations in Poland, free media in Poland, public intellectuals in Poland, the women's movement in Poland, the LGBTIQ rights movements in Poland, the environmental protection movement in Poland, the judges in Poland, and the academics in Poland, right? So this is a really hard, long struggle that they have fought uphill for 5 years now, or more than 5 years, while cowardly governments in Europe have hoping that this would fix itself and given just a bare minimum of support. Okay, so this is, I mean, this story that you were told by your Polish friend, right? It's a distorted propaganda version of this story. The EU is dragged by the nose into this, very reluctantly. The court has had to be careful because it knows it will get nowhere without political backing from the member states, and that's been very, very hard to get. So that's the question I would like to ask. You are an EEA EØS expert, right? Mm-hmm. Could you explain in some simple words, right, why this is really dangerous for the European Union and why this trouble for the European Union is really dangerous for Norway and for us as Norwegian citizens, because that's important to understand as well, I think.
Yes.
I think, as Dorota said, it is so important for Norway, for Norwegian citizens, for Norwegian businesses, because if we are to have a judiciary system that is working on the EU level, meaning that if you have somebody committing a crime in one member state, it should be possible to get this person back to the country, to have a fair trial and to be sentenced if that's the judgment. Right now, this possibility, the European arrest warrant, is not working as it should be. Because as many, as Dutch courts, as the Irish court, right now Norwegian court, they are actually having doubts whether we should let the Polish citizen to be sent back to Poland, because we can't guarantee that this person will have a fair trial, and it's not about what crime this person allegedly committed or not. It's about having a fair trial. So if we don't have this guarantee that we have independent judges, also Norwegian business should be afraid of entering any agreements with their Polish partners. I have recently seen a conversation with the German ambassador, and he said that there are many German enterprises that really want to invest in Poland. But they started to be quite reluctant because they don't have any guarantee. Even if they get a judgment in their case, a favorable judgment, it may turn out that, well, okay, that was a fake judge that issued the judgment. It's not valid anymore. How much money, how much time can you spend? That's a risk. Other issues that should be raised. Poland is a member of the EU, so what is happening in Poland is having an impact on other countries. We see Hungary, we see Romania, we see certain worrying trends. There are other countries where there are problems with independent judiciary system, and what is going in Poland, that the EU is being very passive, is not reacting in an appropriate way, is in a way encouraging such ideas, that maybe we should also have a system disciplining judges so as they finally are loyal, as we would like them to be. So yes, that would be those issues that are so extremely important, and of course human rights. We have to remember that Polish citizens are not only Polish citizens, but they are also European citizens, and their rights should be also protected by the EU. Some were comparing situation in Poland with the situation of Great Britain, but Great Britain, they just left. It's not our problem anymore. While Poland is still in the EU, is still having a huge impact on other member states. And it's not possible to just kick out Poland, because you need to have all member states saying yes to such an idea. And of course we know that Orban is cooperating with Kaczynski, with the Polish Prime Minister. So they have this agreement, and it's not possible to kick out Poland or kick out Hungary, no matter how they behave.
Would you like to add a comment here, or?
Well, about the international judicial cooperation, I would like to add another risk that we have at this point. It's not just the independence of the judiciary, it's about whether this judicial authority that is asking for assistance or has issued an European arrest warrant is actually a judicial authority that has been properly nominated. So with the so-called fake judges, as Malgorzata said, it's not just a problem whether this court is independent, it's a problem of whether this is a court at all. So actually, to show you how serious this problem is, I will tell you that we have a search machine designed by one of the civil society organizations that can allow the user to find out whether the judge was properly appointed or not. So you put the name in the search machine and it tells you whether this person has been nominated with the by the new politicized Judicial Council, and it's in Polish and it's in English. So this is how common this problem has become. And this has extreme importance for any international relations, not only in criminal cases, but also in commercial relations, because when you cooperate with another country, you want to know that your rights will be respected in that country. So this is very serious, not only for Norway, not only for Poland, EU, but also for Norway.
It's a side of political risk and also juridical risk involved here. I think there was one question more. Was that right? Or did I overlook someone? No. Everybody has been able to ask their questions. I would like just to comment at last, because there seemed to be something that talks, and that is money. And we have noticed from the Norwegian perspective that some so-called LGBT-free zones changed their regulations when they were not allowed, when they did not get a hold on money from the European Solidarity Fund, what we called EØS fund. So how deep-rooted is this, actually, when it comes to such a simple thing as money?
Well, it depends on how deep your pocket is, I would
maybe.
say. So, I mean, values, money. Seems that the choice might be quite easy if it's big enough money. So yes, of course, the Norwegian government was very bold when they decided that those Polish municipalities that declared themselves as so-called LGBT-free zones, that they won't be benefiting from the EEA funds. And of course, you know that Norway has to pay a certain amount of money because it's benefiting from being a part of the internal market, and this money goes to amongst other Poland, and in fact Poland is getting the most of the money. And the money is being spent for many different purposes. The problem is that the biggest part of the money is being administered by the government, by the different agencies or ministries. And we know how corrupt all their institutions are. Some part of money is going to the Batory Foundation that is supporting civic society. And amongst others, the Norwegian section of the International Commission of Jurists is trying to explain to the Norwegian government that Norway should definitely stop sending the money to Poland, because it's supporting the Polish government and it's supporting its propaganda. And it worked, as you said, extremely well with those LGBT-free zones, because suddenly all those declarations they were taken back. And we hear almost every day that another municipality took it back, another municipality took it back. Because it was not only about EEA money, it was also about EU funds. And those funds are important. So suddenly it turned out that, well, those values are maybe not so expensive as we thought, so we can change our minds if it's big enough money. So that's the double standards we have, unfortunately.
We all have double standards, don't we?
Yes, to some extent, but...
To some extent. But,
If I may,
yes,
if I
sure,
may
sure.
add something. Well, it's the matter of the deepness of the depth of the pocket and the desperation to have your own. I mean, Polish government already threatened that if they don't get the money from the EU, they will get it. They will borrow it from the Chinese, for example. But what I am sure of is that without the safeguards and without the legislation to put things into proper condition, for example, the state of the judiciary, but also, well, other issues that are important that have been banned in Poland, any money that is transferred to the Polish government, either from the EU or from the EEA, will be used to consolidate the power of the Peace Party in Poland. And it will not be used for the common good, but it will be used to enforce the authoritarian regime in Poland. So if any money is to be passed to Poland, it should be done very carefully and under strict supervision. And right now, it is not likely that the Polish government will listen to reason. So we are at a very critical point here, not only with the EU funds, but also with the EEA funds, because they, in lack of the EU funds, they could be misused. The EEA funds could be misused by the Polish government to stay in power. And that's my warning.
We will close it there, and thank you for your advice in the end there, and not at least for your participation, Dorota Sabludowska. We wish you all the best in your struggle in Poland.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and
thank you for having us here.
It was. You really have shared information that we so difficultly can get in our media and elsewhere. So to have this source as you have is just fantastic for us. So thank you so much. And also thank you so much to you. I have difficulties with explaining your name in Malgorzata. That's easy, but I got a lecture from a Polish friend of mine, but Cyndecka, that's right?
Yeah, that's almost perfect.
Oh.
And it happens so rarely that it's being pronounced in a correct way. So I actually got used to the different way of, but
you are adoptable.
So
Dorota, you should have some flowers. It is limitations on digital transactions here, but we have some flowers to Zarota, Malgorzata, and if we have luck, you will also have some later on. But at least you can share this together.
Oh,
it's
beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you for being with us in the audience here and also on streaming. And don't forget to use this opportunity to be a member of the European movement. It's very easy. Aurora will stand down there and notice if you would like to be a member, or you can do it on net. Just www.europabevegelsen.no/bli medlem. Thank you so much, and good night.